So this is another edition of Frontier Opening Bell, or program of Frontier Africa Reports. I'm Temple Ashaji. Thank you for joining us on the show. With us on the program this morning, we've got Segun Adams, an industrial goods analyst with Greenwich Merchant Bank. Thank you, Segun, for coming through. Nyeka Ijoma of Deap Capital Management. Thank you for joining us on the show this morning. So better quickly, let us look at the state of things when it comes to the indices of the markets. We start with the Nigerian Stock Exchange, where the markets yesterday managed to rise by 0.14%. That was on Wednesday. The Ivory Coast markets, represented by the BRVM Stock Exchange, was also up 0.81%. The Egyptian Stock Exchange 0.16% positive on Wednesday. Nairobi Stock Exchange in Kenya, a little bit of a slip, 0.02%. That's for Wednesday. And Johannesburg Stock Exchange jumped back up 0.42% Wednesday. Now let's cross to the Western African headlines. We're looking today across the western part of Africa. Key stories for us in this region will be the AMCON, which is the asset management company of Nigeria, seizing the assets of Deap Capital directors over a 1.6 billion naira debt. And AMCON is the bad bank buyer in Nigeria, and it's the Deap Capital is a listed financial company in the on the Nigerian Stock Exchange. And the Securities and Exchange Commission of Nigeria also looks to overturn the Abuja Federal High Court ruling on Oando-SEC 2018 AGM. With Ghana Central Bank releases guidelines for remittances of services by service providers. Stimulus bonds is something that Togo, the government of Togo, is looking to raise with some 40 billion CFA to be raised on the 5th of March. The West African Development Bank, that's the bank for the West African Monetary Union in western part of Africa, agrees to grant some 10 billion CFA loans to Guinea-Bissau. And Cote d'Ivoire is to pay half-year profits, partial repayments of 5.75% loan capitalization. Onyeka, let me come to you with these headlines. AMCON story is a big one for us. Deap Capital is on the Nigerian Stock Exchange, and in recent times they've been having some issues. Give us a sense of your perspectives from Deap Capital Management on this particular headline.
Yeah, thank you very much, Temple. Looking at Deap Capital Management, we note that their performances have been relatively poor in the past couple of years, and more importantly, their operating income has not been able to service their highly leveraged position in the past couple of years, leading to them report losses after losses. AMCON being the bad bank, doing what they are supposed to do, has rightfully stepped in. Shareholders, I recall a couple of years ago, had actually called for this. They had actually called for this in case of Deap Capital. And basically we're just seeing AMCON step in. We note that recently they appointed an interim management team who basically take over and steady the ship. Looking through AMCON's modus operandi in other situations, we expect that they'll be looking to sell off to a strategic investor who will come in and steady the ship, which should be a good thing in this situation. On the positive side for AMCON, they have some respite for the loans, because they were able to seize several property. According to the notice, I think about seven key properties properties in prime areas, which should go a long way into offsetting some of the debt if they are able to offload this, or at least include it in the valuation when looking to sell it, divest the operations to a strategic investor. Well, moving on to Deap.
Okay. Yes, please go ahead. Just go on.
Yeah. So moving on from the Deap Capital story, the Oando story for me is actually the most interesting because it's one that has been drawn out since 2017. About the time that I entered into the market, it's about the time that I started covering the Nigerian market. And it started with a petition from a major shareholder of Oando to the National Assembly, actually. And the House of the National Assembly actually summoned the Securities and Exchange Commission to look into the claims of the shareholder that there were some irregularities in Oando's operations, whether in terms of their financial representations, in terms of their corporate governance code, and in terms of their representation of certain assets and liabilities. When it happened, the SEC first placed the stock on some suspensions on some trading suspensions on the stock, kept it on technical suspension for a long time before it started trading freely after a while. And it's very interesting because this has been drawn on for almost 4 years now, but we've had very little in the way of information flow. The transparency around the dealings have been so poor, and investors have been kept in the dark. The last time Oando released any of its results was they've not even released their 2019 full year results. That's how crazy it's been, and shareholders have basically been stuck in limbo, not knowing how to value the stocks. They've not had an AGM in a while, and I should say that this current ruling by the Federal High Court, it does not end the investigation into Oando, I should state, because it seems like the market was kicked into a frenzy yesterday and the stock was up very significantly yesterday. It does not end the investigation. It only allows Oando to conduct AGMs and to release their full year result, which is important for investors anyways. But I think that at the end of the day, the SEC was well within its rights to actually push for investigations into these things. Corporate governance is something that we don't take very seriously. We don't take seriously enough in Nigeria. We should pay a lot more attention to it. Now, I'm definitely not saying that the SEC will find something, but General Electric in the US, we know that there is a possibility and investors need to be aware. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Onyeka. Shegun, let me come to you briefly for your understanding of these headlines, AMCON and that of SEC. How are you digesting them at Greenwich Merchants Bank, rather?
Okay, because Onyeka has spoken extensively on both, so I would not want to take time so we can move to other issues, but especially the issue of Oando is of particular interest. So you see the case where shareholders are fighting the regulator in the market, and the issue is quite unfortunate because you put yourself in the shareholders, from the shareholders' perspective, that have been kept in the dark since SEC in several years ago, 2 years ago at least, restricted Oando rather from having the 2019 AGM. The company has not been able to disclose its books. Shareholders have been quite in the dark, and recently it took the case of a gentleman, a shareholder, to go to court and then seek to reverse that order by SEC. And the argument is that this is the court is arguing that AGM is provided for in KAMA, is a provision in KAMA, and also shareholders have a constitutional right to lawful assembly. So we saw the market yesterday. The share moved up by 10%. The maximum daily allowable. It shows that investors are really eager for this to fall through. But my hope is that there is a resolution to this, because whichever side you want to look at it, the shareholder interests have to be put first. And right now, they are not very happy about all of these issues.
All right, and thank you so much, Shegun. Bosun Omofaya, Executive Editor at Frontier Africa Reports, has just joined us. Bosun, thank you for coming through. We've got a couple of other headlines across the western part of Africa. Do you want to quickly touch on them under 30 seconds or less than 60 seconds before we could go to East Africa?
I think we should move to East Africa. Thank you. I think my colleagues, our
Great.
analysts have covered was Nigeria extensively.
Great. Thank you so much, Bosin. Thank you for your benevolence. Let's now touch on the Eastern African headlines, and quickly we've got the tripartite free trade area set for June as new date for ratification. That's a threshold that everyone is watching at this point. Econ Holdings lists its income and development real estate investment trust schemes on Nairobi bourse, the unlisted securities platform specifically, and of course in Ethiopia. The IMF expects the economy to grow by 2% this year, 2021, and 8.7% in 2022. Wasn't you have a second for all of these headlines there?
Yeah, I think the tripartite free trade agreement, which the East African community is discussing, is a very big one. Kenya is getting some flack as we speak over the last 48 hours, 72 hours since that news of that 25-year deal, free import, duty-free with United Kingdom came there. Kenya has been behaving recently a little bit in a manner that seemed to suggest that, yes, you are the big brother in East Africa, but we seem to care less about the others. So that seemed to be to be getting the country, the Kenyatta's administration, a bit of a negative press as we speak. The old tripartite agreement, let's see how that goes out within the free trade area. You can't ignore Egypt in East Africa. What is in these deals for Kenyatta administration? They have an election coming up in about a year or so from now, and all of that. Is this a very strategic move? What diplomatic relations between certain countries, the US and the UK also, is Kenya trying to secure behind the rest of the other sovereigns within that region? That remains to be seen. The IMF is forecasting Ethiopia's at 2% for this year, 8.7% for next year, 8.7% next year. It looks like a fantastic story from out of nowhere, but let's just hope that it happens. Let's hope that before then, Ethiopia would have privatized its telecommunications sector, the whole issue of Ethiotel would have been put into rest. The whole problem with the Tigray region, with the civil war that just sort of ended in a manner of speaking, will also be put to rest. And the whole fiscal balance for Ethiopia will continue to play out in a very nice way. They will resolve the issue of the Nile River with Egypt on one hand and Sudan on the other hand, and be able to get the Renaissance Dam, about $4 billion US project, up and running as well to provide more electricity for the country. But it looks like very, very optimistic. 2% this year, 8.7% next year. A few other stories around Kabasid and others relates to corporate news from within the East African region. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bosin. Let's quickly move to the Southern African headlines here, where South Africa's Ministry of Finance, or Minister of Finance, Mboweni, Budget 2021 speech unraveling is something that is also worth giving some attention to. Moody's is also expecting South Africa to grow by 4.5% in 2021 and 1.1% in 2022. Africa Bank names Gustav Rebehema as its interim CEO. Gustav was the former chief financial officer. Zimbabwe's gold production dipped by 31% in 2020. And of course, Botswana Insurance Holdings says its profit before tax rising higher to between 19 and 29%, just a 10% band. Onyeka, let's look at your thoughts on South Africa's projections by the projections of Moody's for South Africa, that they will be growing by some 4.5% in 2021, shrinking by 1.1% in 2022.
Yeah, thanks very much. I think we've seen some disparities in growth projections for 2021 and even the growth estimates for 2020. And that's across the major projecting bodies, the World Bank, the IMF, and now we're even seeing a different one from Moody's. I think as a last projection, the World Bank had it at 3.3% in 2021 for South Africa. Moody's has it at 4.5% for South Africa in 2021. And I should note that the disparity in this growth forecast usually stem from a disparity in expectations of vaccine inoculation ramp-ups, that's vaccination ramp-ups. And it basically highlights the fact that in 2021, we are still feeling the impact of the pandemic from 2020, and the pace of growth, the pace of recovery from the lows of 2020 is going to be determined by how quickly we are able to move on, how quickly different countries are able to move on from the pandemic. South Africa at 4.5% and a 1.1% in 2022 is projected to be one of the lowest across emerging markets, one of the lowest recoveries across emerging markets, largely because, and one of the reasons is a lot of the projecting bodies are wary of vaccination ramp-ups across the country, as well as looking into key deficiencies such as the infrastructure challenges that the country continues to have, the challenges plaguing their public corporations such as ESCOM, South African Airways, and the amount of money they are still pumping in without adequate rewards generally.
Okay, then thank you, great deal, Onyeka. Also, let me come to you quickly. I mean, there's a couple of corporate stories on this tray for us to deal with as well.
Yes, the Zimbabwe gold production declining by about 31%. We all understood what happened last year. The miners in South Africa seem to be able to get a whole lot more out of the ground in terms of gold than like Anglo Gold, Ashanti, and the rest of them. The folks in Zimbabwe seem to be to decline in terms of their gold production, 31%, the lowest in 5 years. That's not good news for that country. If you consider the fact that our gold has rallied all throughout last year. Diamond took the back seat. Gold and silver were the main gainers of last year on the back of the COVID-19 and all of that. Central bankers around the world were buying gold fast and furious from Russia to Nigeria to elsewhere. So that's one news there. The South Africa's Mboweni budget speech was well received. It says they were hard, tough decisions. They're doing a bit of a corporate rejigging in terms of corporate tax. Not so much. They're looking at how to cut deficits down as well. Let's see how all of that happen. Some of the state-owned enterprises that are not doing well, let's see how they can pull them up with some of it, like Land Bank getting about 5 billion rand to get back into business.
Right, and thank you so much, Bosun. Northern African headlines now, where Telecom Egypt gains 3.3% to 4.58 billion Egyptian pounds in profit for 2020. EgyptAir Holding is to propose a merger of affiliate companies next week. 9 of the affiliated companies are expected to be spun off or shrunk into 4 companies eventually. New Ismailia posts some 1.13 million Egyptian pounds loss in 2020. BOAD agrees to a capitalization court. Morocco, we've got Saham Assurance reporting some 5.12 billion dirhams in terms of 2020 calendar year. And Moody's expects or cuts Tunisia's rating to B3 from B2, keeping it on negative outlook. There's a whole lot about Moody's in the news across our regions today. Bosun, let me quickly come to you for your reactions on this as well. Your mic is on mute, Bosun.
I think I'll speak to Telecom Egypt in terms of the numbers. The telecoms were the ones who took a whole lot of money away last year, aside the gold market. I think Telecom Egypt 3.3% growth in profit after tax for last year was no brainer. So congratulations to them.
Okay, Segun, any of these headlines that catchy a bit to you, especially that of Egypt here, do you want to have a go with that?
Yeah, I don't want to take us back, but okay. But let me go with the Moody's. I think I'll relate it back to South Africa. Something we missed out on the budget speech. In the case where we have in the case of Moody's and Morocco, Tunisia, we have a situation where the country is not being able to implement some of the reforms it has to, and this is as a result of some let me not say populism, but what you find is that there are civil organizations that these policies are not very popular, we must admit. And coming in the aftermath of COVID, they seem to create more hardship. You know, people. It's always expected that reforms take. There's this kind of when you want to initiate reforms after something like a pandemic, you find a kind of sort of a pushback because people feel that the short-term pain, it's a lot for them to take on. So being unable to implement some of those reforms has informed Moody's decision now to look for that rate rather for Tunisia. And then when you look at South Africa, it's almost the same thing. So the budget speech we saw they were cutting down on some of the social, social interventions program. Around 9 billion, around, sorry, 6, 11, and around 20 billion over the next 3 years will be cut down in the budget for social intervention. And South Africa has admitted that they don't have the capacity for that. Fiscal space is limited because revenue has gone down, and that is going to also affect the performance or the ability of the government rather to intervene in the economy. So all in all, what we are seeing is that post-COVID or in the phase of recovery, after, even while we are recovering from the pandemic, rolling out vaccines, there's always that issue of how much fiscal space we have or countries we have to implement reforms, how much fiscal space they will have to roll out budgets that are growth focused. I think those are the issues in Tunisia, whether Egypt, even in Nigeria, we're going to see some of that play out, and that will inform our growth path in the coming years.
Okay, and thank you very much, Shegun Adams, for your analysis there. Well appreciated. Shegun Adams is an industrial goods analyst with Greenwich Merchant Bank. Thank you for appearing on the show. Bosonomo Faya, executive editor on Frontier Africa Reports. Thank you also for coming through. Onyeka Ijeoma of Deap Capital Management. Thanks a great deal for your presence on the show this morning. Well appreciated. Thank you, gentlemen. This has been Frontier Opening Bell for today. I'm Temple Ashaju. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.